there are a lot of misconceptions when it comes about investing. And a couple of those are, for example, that you need to know it all before you start investing. Another one is that you need to have loads and loads of money and a big buffer before you start investing, or that you may lose it all if you start investing. So in order for us to start investing and to kind of get ahead towards that piece of becoming financially independent, I have invited a very special guest today to my Josefine Meets series, because the Josefine Meets series is all about learning from others who are already doing it so that we can be inspired and take the next steps that we need to take. So welcome, Martin, to Josefine Meets today. I'm so happy to have you as a guest.
Thank you for having me. It's good to connect with you. Obviously, it's one of the first people I connected with on LinkedIn, so it's been a pleasure to join you on this today.
Yeah, we're still going strong, and you're a huge influencer and growing every day on LinkedIn, Martin.
I wouldn't say a huge influencer, but I'm trying to give the benefit of some of my experience to people starting out.
Yeah, and I think that is also part of the whole thing of what we are doing here, kind of to take like bits and pieces of what we know, and what we know also know that people really struggle with. So this episode is going to be like packed with a couple of steps that you can implement immediately. So if you need to bring a pen and paper to this episode, then do that. Just pause this video, grab your pen and paper and start taking notes. Or you can go back and rewatch it again and again and again. And we are going to share afterwards and in the show notes how you can best connect with Martin. But before we do that, or before we're at the end of the video, Martin, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and what you're doing now.
Yeah, well, my background is all in financial services. So I've worked in various jobs as a stockbroker and investment management and financial advice. And I just felt like there was this gap in the market. You were always kind of helping people who were already wealthy. And there was this barrier to entry with a lot of the times where you had a minimum criteria of, say, 100,000 to invest or a minimum income. And I just felt like there was so many people in the UK, the kind of people that I met at the school gates, the kind of people that were asking questions. I felt like if I could leave the industry and become a financial coach, I could help people learn the things that they didn't learn in school. And I could also give them a lot of the ingredients that they need to then basically make their financial health better, and basically for the rest of their life kind of track the key financial numbers that will get them wealthy over time, without charging them a fortune or without charging them for the rest of their life, like the financial industry would. So I felt like that was the gap, and I set up Financial Health Club about a year ago. I left Schroders and set up Financial Health Club. And it's been great because there hasn't been like a typical client. There's been very high earning clients working in television. There's been those starting out, the young people in their 20s, really wanting to learn about the stock market, wanting to learn about shares, and wanting to build that wealth and make that compound interest work for them really more powerfully, because they can see, when I use things like cash flow modeling, they can see the difference they can make to their future if they start now. So it's been brilliant working with so many different types of people and really helping them get to what they value in life, sitting down with them, talking about, using money as a tool to get what you really value. What you really value, are you really spending money on it? Are you really spending money on the things that you truly value? Because a lot of the times when you sit down with a client, possibly we're not, we're spending a lot of our money paying Jeff Bezos to become richer. We're paying more money to Richard Branson rather than paying ourselves first. We're working hard with our money, but we're not using our money to fund our best life and our family's best future. And I feel like getting people to sit and talk about that's something that in the financial industry, it's not done enough. There's not that time to really drill down and to really talk to people about what it is that they value in their life.
Yeah, and you and I both come from the banking, so we've all both been in big organizations where it's all about making the rich people richer. So I truly get kind of like your passion for how you want to help everyone that actually wants to help, not just those that are ultra high net worth or whatever they might be, right? And it's not a secret, that there is a lot of worry around money, and also kind of I don't know the statistics obviously, but the couples that they argue mostly about money. So money is important, and we need money to actually live. We need money to do what we want to do. But I guess, and I've seen your list on LinkedIn, for example, what I wish I knew when I was in my 20s or whatever for some of these things. And I totally agree with you. I mean, if one, if we would just have saved a tiny fraction back then, or during the corporate days, a little bit more, careful about what we spent on, it could have been different, right? So how would you, when kind of the typical client, what is the very first question they have when they come to you?
I think the very first question, I think they want to know kind of where they're at. They want to know where they are now, and also they want to get much clearer on a lot of the questions. Because I think what you have to understand is, when a client comes to me, they haven't just been thinking about this for a month or 6 months. Often they've been putting it off for years. They've been putting important documents in a drawer and thinking that's for a rainy day, that's for another day, we'll kick the can further down the road. And by the time they come to me, they have so many questions because they've never known who to go to. Because traditionally, you need a certain amount to invest to go to a financial advisor. And there is, and certainly in the UK, there is a certain mistrust there can be of financial advisors, of the financial industry, that they're going to do the best for them. So I think there's so many it's a safe space to ask so many of those questions that you maybe didn't understand from your pension paperwork, your investment paperwork, or just understanding how investments work, how pensions work. Just to have somebody to ask those questions to, and just to see where you're at, and also how you can make your life better. There's so many mistakes that people make down to the lack of knowledge that we just didn't gain. I mean, I talk about it in LinkedIn, the stupid mistakes that I made in my youth. Like the perfect example being like giving away a pension because I'd been working at the company for 23 months, which was like within the 2-year limit. So they would give you the return of the pension premiums you paid, which I thought back then to go on holiday to Ayia Napa was like winning the lottery. They were giving me this money back, but nobody sat me down and explained to me that I was actually giving away this huge value in the future that could be, tens and tens of thousands of pounds as a cash value. I was actually just giving that away to go on a boys' holiday. But I didn't know that because pensions had never been explained to me at school. That was my first job out of school. So I had no knowledge. And obviously the company must have been laughing all the way to the bank at the fact that I was just about to take return of premiums, because obviously they're not going to have to pay me anything in the future. So I think knowing these things and taking out things like student loan debt and taking out debt and credit cards, these are mistakes that I made. And I think it's important to share these so that people can learn, and people can learn that these are not a quick way to building wealth, or just a quick way to get into a form of a poor money mindset. But the good thing is you can get out of that. You can retrain your brain. You can get that money made. Because I think by nature, when we're young, and I don't know if it was the same for you in Sweden, but in Scotland, when you grew up and somebody said, you've got £20, they would immediately say, you've got £20, what are you going to spend it on? It wasn't like, you've got £20, are you going to save this percentage? Are you going to maybe save this towards something in the future that you value? Are you going to save up for something that you can get like a year from now, or a computer game 6 months from now? It was very much, you've got £20, what are you going to spend it on? Let's go to the shop and spend every single penny of that £20. So I think by nature, a lot of us kind of, by advertising techniques as well, but we become prone to overspending from a young age. And I think there's been studies done recently that show that a lot of money behaviours are actually learned by the age of 7. So one of the things I do with clients is I do work on them. If they have kids, I do a lot of work on the side of what you can teach kids as well, because I think teaching kids about money and getting that right money mindset from a young age can be incredibly important. And if you can teach kids about the value of investing in the stock market, for example. So if you set up an investment with a child and they watch it grow, they become attached to that money. Unlike a lot of people would save and give a child money at 18 or 21, but then they haven't been involved in that process. They haven't seen it grow. It doesn't feel part of them. They then see it as this kind of lottery winner bonus that should be spent, rather than if they see that money building, they will value that money, and they will come to care about it in the same way that you maybe care about a pet, for example. And they wouldn't want to see that money as soon as they hit 18 being spent. So I think these are things that I really want to help that next generation as well. I think that by helping my clients, I can help the next generation as well by them educating their kids on the things that, largely none of us were taught in school, unfortunately. I don't know what it was like. Was it any different? Did you get taught about money in school in Sweden?
No, I don't think so. But my family was more like, oh, you need to have a proper job so that you can pay your bills. That was kind of the ultimate goal, to pay your bills. And when I actually started working, and then I studied. And when I quit my job to study, my mom said, why quit your job? You have such a great job. Why do you want to go study? So that was like the whole, how we were kind of brought up. And I remember when I started to study, I studied international finance, and we had this corporate finance, or what do you call it? Corporate finance, I think it was called, the course or whatever. And there were two guys there who held this course, and I guess back then they were probably 35 or 40 something. They felt like they were so old, but they probably weren't. And they said, you should at least lose back then like 5,000 Swedish crowns, which is about like 500 pounds probably back then, on your first investment. So they kind of, the first message they said was, you need to lose money to learn the game. And you and I had a little bit of a discussion about this before. So why don't we move into that, about how to get a feeling for this whole investment. I want to tie this also a little bit, but together with you have to have a buffer before you start investing, or you have to have loads of money before you start investing. Depending, loads of money is always a subjective definition, right? But how would you say, if someone is interested in starting to invest, and we talk about real money now, because I think that is also a point that you want to make.
There used to be barriers to entry that were quite high in the financial industry. I think that comes from the fact you did need to have a certain amount to invest in order to access investments. Now, with the internet and all these different companies setting up online that you can open accounts online within 10 to 15 minutes, whether that's an ISA or it's a pension, it's very simple. And now there is no barrier to entry. It's not a minimum £1,000 or a minimum £500 for most platforms. So you can start with small amounts. Obviously, as you say, the amount can't be too small. There's no point really investing £2 or £3, because obviously there are charges involved. But you can start with a minimal amount now, and there isn't. And I always think you should start with real money. A lot of people will talk about, dummy trading accounts or demo accounts, and to me, you'll never really understand what it's like investing until it's actually your hard-earned money that you're actually putting in. So I would use the analogy, it's similar to like playing a racing car game in an arcade or on a computer. Like, you're not actually the one taking the risk. That's why you're driving at 180 miles an hour into a corner. Like, you're not really actually actively the one doing it. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be racing into that corner at quite high a speed. So it's the same kind of analogy. It's the same kind of process. If you have a demo account and you're quite willing to put £10,000 of your demo money onto something that you haven't researched well, that's perfectly natural when it's not real, but you probably would feel quite different about that if it was your £10,000 that you'd worked hard for. And I think nowadays there is so much information there, and a lot of people invest the same way, and they use index funds and they use multi-asset funds, which are obviously diversified for you. So that means that everything is spread out for you. Your assets are separated between different, your properties and your shares and your bonds. So it's all kind of done for you, which wasn't something that existed many years ago. So it's very easy nowadays for people to invest for themselves. They can do attitude to risk questionnaires. They can find out more themselves about how they would like to invest. And helping them, as I say, get these ingredients, show them how most people are cooking these ingredients. That's what most people need. If you want something really complex, you want to cook a meal by Gordon Ramsay, for example, you are going to maybe need some very specialist help, or to pay excessive fees to a personal chef or to a wealth manager. But for most people, and that is the vast majority, they are not going to need that level of help. They won't need to invest that much every year that they're going to have any complex issues. So most people can get started straight away. I think the thing that they don't do enough of is just simply take that action, simply believe in themselves, simply reach out and get that help. Because, you know, working with a coach, whether it's myself or somebody else, within 3 months you'll understand more than you ever thought you could, and you'll realise that, as Peter Lynch famously said, one of the most famous investors in the world, he said, all the maths that you'll ever need to learn about the stock market, you learn in the 4th grade. You know, what he's basically saying is, this is not complicated stuff. It is made to seem very complicated by an industry that is built around it, making a lot of money to confuse. So, I mean, effectively, that is really why so many people need to get that bit that's missing. It's just that gap that's missing that they didn't get in school. And if they can get that, they'll have enough information to build their wealth, certainly for the foreseeable future. And as I say, getting started is really the main thing that most people need to do. They need to take that first step. And after that, they'll be kicking themselves that they didn't do it earlier, especially when you see the benefits of compounding, the benefits of your money gaining each year based on what you have in your pot already. So that's one of the key factors. And I think it's just about really bringing those concepts into people's minds, like tracking your net worth, learning your financial numbers. You know, I'm very aware of the fact that, like, if I was to stop 100 people on the street anywhere and say, what's your height, what's your weight, how many calories should you have a day, how many steps should you do a day, everybody can just, with the click of a finger, without even thinking of it, they can give you those answers. But if I say, what's your net worth, what's your savings rate, how much is your money compounding at each year, they have no idea.
Yeah, they would probably put the fingers in the ears, like, don't tell me.
That's information overload. But these are key numbers. These are the numbers that are going to get you to what you truly want. You know, these are the numbers that will actually help you get to the life that you truly value, whether that's as I say, a house in France, or working less, or spending more time with the people you love, which is kind of what a lot of people's main goal is, or just to have that ability to make money while you sleep. These are the things that you just need to embed. They're really not difficult. You can learn most of it at primary school. It's just that it wasn't taught.
Yeah, and also, as you said in the beginning, to really start with where you are today. What do you have today? Because if you don't, it's like with any gap analysis that you do. If you don't know what you are today and where you want to be, it will be very difficult to fill the gap.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why I use like cash flow models clients, so that we can understand in a graphic representation of where they are now, what life events you want to build into it. For example, I want to save for a wedding in 10 years. I would like to take my family on a trip around the world at the age of 45 or 55. And we can model that into the future. It's already got interest rates and inflation and tax built into it. So it's got all these things built into it. So we put your income, your expenses, your assets into it, and we see what is your house likely to be worth in 15 years? What is your pension likely to be worth based on the rate of return it's receiving? If we do start an investment now and we put £100 a month into it, what's that going to look like in 5, 10, 15 years? What about if we double the premium every 5 years? What about if you put 200 in and then a 400? And I think just showing people the difference they can make to their lives, they're like, oh, wow, I didn't realize I could have 1.5 million if I started now and did this. You know, these numbers amaze them. So they then take that action straight away and think, right, I need to start doing this. I can make such a difference to the life of not only myself, but my family. And I can have the things that I want. I never thought I could do this. I thought investing was for other people. I thought investing was for rich people. But the only difference between the wealthy people is that they actually started. You know, they actually did invest, possibly because of the education they may have had from parents who did invest. But I've often found that even some of my clients will have parents who invested, but even the parents didn't tell their kids that they were investing. It was almost like this taboo. You don't talk about your investment. You don't talk about the amount of money your pension's made. It's a taboo in the UK. Don't talk about money. The last thing you talk about is money, and that doesn't help. It's that kind of idea. Children don't want to ask lots of questions about money. Certainly, when I was young, it was not something that was ever spoken about. So if we can change that a bit as well, that would be fantastic, for the next generation to feel more confident. Because I feel like in the United States, people are just a lot more open. They're a lot more open about what they earn. They're a lot more open about how much their pensions are worth, what they save in, and they talk to each other. And I think we need to get definitely to that level more in Europe, I would say. I think it's not something that people in Europe tend to, certainly not in the UK, we don't talk enough about, to each other about these things, which would then help some of us get the knowledge that we need to start, or the confidence we need to start. So I think that's really important as well.
And also I think to see what's possible, right? Like you said, when you start with the forecasting and you add all these kind of like criteria into it, and you see what's possible. And the same goes with hearing how others are doing it, hearing how much others are making, or whatever it might be. It makes it kind of really tangible to say, okay, if they can make an additional 1,000 or 10,000 per month, well, then I can do that too. And I think that is a really important piece of the puzzle too, to see kind of like, which is also why I think it's really helpful to be in a group with others where you get to see how they do it and to be inspired by them, and to feel like, okay, if Martin can do it, or if Peter can do it, then I can do it too.
Yeah, and I think that's why I've read so many books by the world's kind of greatest investors, just understanding the mindset, understanding how they started, and understanding it's that consistency and making sure that you always have that ability each month to save and invest, and making that a priority. There's a famous story that I think within the last few years, where there was a janitor in America died with about 9.2 million, I think, in his investments. And that came from discipline. It came from investing a part of his salary each month. Now, a lot of people get confused with the idea that you need a high salary. It's not that people with high salaries, it's a mindset thing. It's not about earning high salaries. I've never earned a high salary in my life. It's about the mindset of saving and investing. I think that's the thing that people get confused by. I will start investing when I earn more money. No, the investments will be earning you much more money than you can possibly. It's not about your income. And I think a lot of people are driven by this idea of, I know lots of people who earn a fortune in income with no savings. So effectively they're living beyond their means, or that they're spending a lot of money on things that they possibly won't value, or that their future self won't be thanking them for when they get there. So it is very much about having a good life now, but also making sure that you're kind of catering for an even better life in the future, and a life where you have just a lot more choice. So that's kind of what I want to get that mindset round about, that idea of paying yourself first being so important. Starting now being one of the best things that you can do, and kind of bridging that gap. I'm talking about bridges again, because I think the last time I spoke to you, you were explaining that bridge concept to me.
Yeah.
You should explain that bridge. I remember you coming out with the board and doing the bridge thing I'd never seen before, because it was all new to me when I joined LinkedIn.
Yeah. The bridge analogy is great. I have a video on it, so I will add the link to the video underneath this video, so that you can watch that video if you want to. But yeah, it's a great analogy, and it works for everything. It's like a very simple explanation for a gap analysis, actually, and from where you are today to where you want to be, and how do you get there. And it's all between your services, or in this case, building some extra funds. I actually listened to a really cool podcast episode, can't remember who it was from, but he said he started with, he just wanted to replace his wife's salary. She was a teacher, so he wanted to replace her salary so that she could choose whether she wanted to continue working, but at least then she had the option. And that's how he started, with a kind of a smaller gap, right? And not saying, oh, I want to have 1 million by the end of the year, but a smaller gap. I want to be able to invest so that I make an extra, I can't remember how much it was, maybe 4 or 5K or whatever it was per month, so that they could replace her salary. That was kind of the first step. And then they were so intrigued by that, and it actually worked. So they continued, and now he teaches others to do it, right? So it's like, just start, like you said. So I have two more questions. So the point about losing it all, because I think that was what scared me. And I know it's not, you don't lose anything unless you sell, right? Or unless something goes bankrupt. But can we talk a little bit about the concept of, oh no, I can't invest because what if I lose it all? So can we just quickly touch base on that one?
Yeah, I think where people get the concept of losing it all is because most people tend to pick investments with no research, no knowledge. So it's a bit like walking through a dynamite factory with a lit match. So they are able to lose all their money because well, one, their mindset is not set up to invest in the first place, so they don't understand the psychology of investing, so they're prone to making bad mistakes. They invest in things they don't understand, so they are prone to maybe investing in things where the company is not making any money. It could be a share, so it's a high risk investment in the first place, and they put 100% of their money into that one share. They don't understand how to understand it, like for example, how the company makes money or if it actually is making money, and then they maybe lose all their money, or they invest in something like Bitcoin. I don't know anything about those coins. In fairness, it's not something I can value, so I don't invest in it myself. And not to say that others haven't and couldn't. So I guess a lot of people invest because their friend in the pub told them to, or their hairdresser told them to, and they then are just basically it's that fear of missing out. They just want to get involved. They don't want to see their friends making money while they are not actively involved, and that tends to be the experience of a lot of people. However, if you're investing, for example, in an index fund that's tracking the 500 biggest companies in America, or the 100 biggest companies in the UK, or a global index tracker, or even a multi-asset fund, the only way that money is going to go bust is if some form of Armageddon happens where all those companies stop making money and go bust overnight. So if that happens, there'll be far bigger problems in the world to worry about than your money. So I think when you're buying into investing, you should be thinking about it as you're actually buying human ingenuity. You're actually buying the fact that in 10 and 20 years from now, there'll be more factories, there'll be better roads, there'll be better transport to Australia, they'll be quicker, there'll be better computer, there'll be electric cars on the road, everybody will have one, there'll be electric facilities set up to serve that, there'll be more people in the world, there'll be more tech that's more advanced. So effectively you're buying that. If I'd said to you 25 years ago that Apple and Amazon would be these companies that did this, you would roll your eyes and say, I don't think that's possible. And equally, you'd have said the same about electric cars. That's hundreds of years away. So you're buying into the future. You're buying, and when you buy a share, you're buying a piece of its future earnings. You're saying, I think that this company will earn more than it is today, than it will today in the future for the next 5-10 years. It's the same when you're investing in an index fund. You're investing in the 500 companies in America, and they will be replaced by the ones that are growing. Your Facebooks, your Googles, the companies that are growing will take place of some of the older dinosaur companies that are starting to fade in their returns. And that's just the way it works. When you're investing for the future, you're very much buying into the fact that I believe that there will be somebody out there creating a company that's going to make a fortune, and these companies will drive the market forward, whether that's in the UK or the US or in Europe or in Asia. So I think that is the key, really, is to think about it in the way that you're putting your money into. You're basically buying a piece of the future, and as long as you're comfortable with the fact that in the future the stock market always goes up. For the last 100 years, if you look at a graph, there will be lots of bad times. There will be lots of times when the newspapers are telling you to sell your investments and that there's no hope left. And usually at that time is the time to actually start buying more if you're looking at a long-term strategy, because the stock market does always rise. I think the S&P 500 has made around about 10% on average, probably about 8% or something after inflation. So if you're investing at that compound rate, your money's doubling every 8 or 9 years, you'd say. So if you're doing that from a young age, you start investing at 18, the compounding effect of that will mean that there's nothing that won't get you an enormous amount of money in the future if you stay consistent.
Yeah, and maybe also to think not to put all your eggs in one basket. We both know Enron and Lehman Brothers, and but who would have known back then, right? But so not put all of your eggs in one basket. I also saw someone who invested in Zoom early on in the pandemic, and that went up like a rocket, and they were like super excited, and they were planning everything, and then shortly thereafter the shares fell down, right?
Yeah,
They
and I think
still made a fortune though. But they had been up here, and now they're all of a sudden. So they were down here. They had been up here, and now they were somewhere here. So they still had made a fortune. So that's also to think of that too, I think.
yeah, I mean, I think one of the worst things that can probably happen to you when you don't know what you're doing is to actually make money quickly, because then you do believe that you have got some form of gift for it, especially when you're buying a share. Because I found that I was lucky that when I started buying shares, I lost a lot of money, and that made me read from a lot of people who knew a lot better than me and had made fortunes. So I gave all my money to books at that point and realised that I didn't know what I was doing when it came to shares. And now buying shares is obviously a passion of mine that I've had for many years, because I now understand, how to look at a company and to understand the key metrics to look for when you're investing, like how much return on capital it's making and how the earnings are rising and how their profits are rising, and look at their debt and make sure that they can pay their debt. The things that you tend to ignore when you don't know what you're looking at. You're just seeing this exciting trend, and literally, I've always said that people will spend more time researching buying a television or a fridge than they ever will with an investment.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah, they'll go online and research their television. They'll ask their friends about televisions. They'll actually go to the shop and maybe go to 2 or 3 different retailers and ask lots of questions and look at prices. But they certainly won't do anything like that when it comes to a couple of £1,000 in Bitcoin or something like that. They just immediately, the money leaves their bank account and they're invested. And I think that's one of the biggest problems. If you can get that help to start with, if you can work with people who are further down the line than you, who understand what it's like when you're starting out, and if you can get that knowledge you need, honestly, it will change your future. There is no way that it won't help you get to where you're going.
Very last question, and then so what are your top 3 tips for someone who's thinking, oh, this has been amazing, I really want to dip my toes into this? So where should they start?
I think the first thing to start with is invest in yourself, get that knowledge. I think once you do that, you're not going to need to do that continuously. So first of all, invest in that knowledge. And the second thing I would say is definitely to start as soon as possible. The effects of compounding and the effects of your money building over time are much more powerful the earlier you start. It's incredible, really, the difference it can make, especially if you start, if you start at 18 or if you start in your 20s. I wish I had a time machine and I could go back. and
Yeah.
And the third tip I would definitely give it is to people is definitely to not overspend on luxuries that'll end up in the bin. And it's so true. I think when I was young, I spent so much money on clothes, trainers, endless nights out, endless, holidays that, there are some good memories, but the memories fade quickly, and you'd probably rather have put some of that money towards your future and some of that money towards investing and some of that towards pensions. So I think if you take those 3 things on board and start to think differently, I think that can really, really get you to a very, very, very different future if you start now.
That too. So start now is Martin's
Yeah,
encouragement, and mine too. Start now. Don't wait for tomorrow. You never know what happens tomorrow anyway. So Martin, how can people best connect with you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, obviously, which I tend to post on every day. About 8 o'clock in the morning, I post on LinkedIn just to give my thoughts on the financial world or anything that can help. You can go on my website, which is financialhealthclub.co.uk. You can book a meeting with me via my LinkedIn. It's all set up to obviously book a free complimentary call. And you can work with me on a kind of 1 or 3 or 6 month basis. Different packages available, and I'm happy to chat through your specific needs about what it is that you want to learn and what it is that you want to get better at with your finances. It's a safe space. I don't sell any products. I'm no longer in the financial industry. I'm not selling you investments or pensions. It's all about giving you that knowledge and helping you get to where you want to go, really, and working together, holding you accountable and making sure that you take that action to move yourself and your life on and get to the life that you truly value.
Lovely having you on the show, Martin. And we will add your contact details in the show notes. And I will end with this with saying something I always wanted to say. So it's Martin Macleod, but not from the clan Macleod. But it's the Martin Macleod. So thank you all for listening to this. And if you need something, if you want something, if you have any question, please reach out to me or to Martin. Thank you so much.